The NFC Championship game takes place at 11:30 on Sunday night. The 6th-seeded LA Rams travel to Lumen Field to take on the number 1-seeded Seahawks and the 12s in Seattle. And the Seahawks favoured by 2.5 points at home, Ciaran, in what is a very, very tight matchup. Another one of these trilogies that we're now seeing in the divisional round. We've seen some very entertaining battles over the course of this season from divisional rivalry spill over into the playoffs. This is a pretty nice one to have in the NFC Championship game. The Rams and Seahawks, an absolute shootout in week 16 of the regular season. Seahawks coming out the right side of that one, 38-37. There was 2 points between them when the Rams won 21-19 in the first of the trilogy earlier on this season. So there is literally 1 point between these two teams on aggregate over 2 games. It couldn't be better poised for this championship.
Yeah, there's been some great games this season between the two of them, especially the one in Week 16 when the Rams went up by a good chunk and then ended up losing. That was a nice offensive performance from both teams, and I think we're going to see a similar situation. Yeah, you're right. This is probably going to be a slightly closer. I think it was 2.5 for the Seahawks. It's probably going to. I think it's going to drop, but the closer we get to the game, it's your classic pick 'em. I mean, both teams. It's a phenomenal offense in Seattle going up against a great defense with the Rams and vice versa. Both teams, you're struggling to see where the weaknesses are across the board. Both teams have got some stellar players, Smith and Jigba, Puca. You look around again, we scan both rosters and we figure out, where's going to be the margin here and what's going to be the key point, who's going to come out on top of this one. So, it's all set up really nice. I mean, you got two teams that know how to score as opposed to the AFC game, which could be a slugfest or a defensive slugfest. I think this one, there's a lot more weapons out there. If I was the Rams, I'd be a little concerned about Stafford the last couple of weeks, especially last week. Notwithstanding the weather we saw in Chicago, but it should be not as cold or as brutal in Seattle. But just struggling with his accuracy. I mean, I think he had 47.6% completion rate against the Bears, and he struggled to get above 60% in 5 of the last 6 games. We saw the struggles he had throwing to Puca. He was wide. It just wasn't happening last week. And you can say what you like about the conditions. I mean, for me, I was surprised that both teams were slinging the rock like they were. But for me, the Rams, we saw how they used 13 personnel during the season, and we saw how McDonald was able to kind of adjust, especially in the second game in Week 16, how McDonald was able to adjust. So I'm looking to see, are the Rams going to bring out, 7 tight ends? It feels like that's what they bring out. They stuff both sides of the line of scrimmage. So I'm looking to see,
is he really interesting on that, because I was watching one of the preview videos earlier and I wasn't aware of this, but the Seahawks, as you might not be surprised to learn, are the number 1 team in terms of the QB rate allowed by their secondary to wide receivers. They're 16th in how they defend tight ends. So if you're coming up against a team that has a little bit of trouble with that position, the Rams are probably the worst matchup.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen what they have. I mean, they got Higbee, Ferguson, Parkinson out there. I mean, blocking tight ends, but they also got great hands. So, I'm sure we'll see. It'll be made a big point when they come out there, whether it's 12 or 13 personnel. But they're going to, McVay's going to, adjust accordingly, and it'll be great to see what McDonald does to counter it. I mean, again, notwithstanding Stafford's struggles of late and probably the last 5 or 6 weeks, and then you look at Darnold. I mean, the Seahawks seem to win in spite of them. They don't need him. I mean, obviously we saw last week it was the Walker show, but I think as the days go on, and the more kind of realization for Seahawks fans that Charbonnet's not out there is going to be a big factor. Charbonnet, for a lot of people who probably don't watch the Seahawks as much, is more of a battering ram. He gets the hard yards, maybe similar to the Lions with Gibbs and Montgomery. Charbonnet will go out, he'll get the big yards, the big heavy yards, and then he'll let Walker kind of finesse and go in for the touchdown. So they're going to miss that key component. So I want to see if it's going to be a case where the Velus Jones, I think, is their 3rd string running back. I don't think he's going to be a factor. But how are the Seahawks going to overcome the fact that they have literally got 1 running back, and the Rams know that, and everybody else knows that? How they're going to counter that? It's going to be, for me, it's going to be I think it's going to be a back and forth game because, like I said earlier, both teams have got some really, great weapons. The weather won't be a factor. They're going to be able to throw it around. Again, the Seahawks with their 12th man, that could be a factor like Denver too. I think it's going to be a leveler though. I don't think it's, when you get to this stage of the playoffs, I mean, we always talk about home field advantage, but we've seen so many teams in the past go as a road team in the championship game, go in and win the game. And it's almost like, it's a great leveler. Both teams played close in the 2 games they played this year. So I expect another close game. What's going to be the margin? I mean, it's really going to come down to how Stafford plays and how Darnold plays. As long as Darnold stays clean and doesn't turn the ball over, he doesn't need to do anything because he's got, the weapons on defense. And we talk about the Pats kind of no-name defense, but the Seahawks defense as well. I mean, they've just been, I don't want to say unheralded, but just the work that they put in. I talk about it, I think it was on Monday, just the work that they put into the camaraderie and the kill or be killed kind of mentality that they have. I think that's going to be the factor ultimately. I think it's just going to be a game that's going to be loaded with amazing plays, loaded with players that are going to ball out. It's going to come down to probably the last couple of minutes of the fourth quarter, and I'm hoping that it's a tight game. But what's really going to be interesting to see is what effect not having Charbonnet out there is for the Seahawks. Are they going to be able to just lean on Smith and Jigba, lean on the extra wide receivers that they'll use, or is it going to be a factor and it's going to be detrimental to their offense? But overall, it's going to be a great game. 2 great teams going at it, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, I've been pretty confident in my pick in this one all week, and as the week has gone on, I've been feeling less and less confident because, for me, these are the 2 best teams in the league, and I think, honestly, whichever team wins this game goes on and wins the Super Bowl, unless there's some kind of freak injuries, and who would want to put that out there, and I won't even think about that any further. And I had picked the Seahawks.
You just did, Conor. You did.
Put that out there, and now I'll take it back. Yeah, sorry, don't you put that evil on me. I had picked the Seahawks earlier on in the week, and I am going to pick the Seahawks. But as the week has gone on, I've felt less and less confident about that because, as I said, I think these two teams are the best 2 teams in the league. I see the Seahawks as a championship caliber team, and a phenomenal job that Mike McDonald and his coaching staff have done there over the last couple of years. As we've said before, at a time when the fashion is to pick an offensive-minded head coach and everybody's looking for the next Kyle Shanahan or Sean McVay or Ben Johnson, the Seahawks zigged when everybody else was zagging and went for Mike McDonald, primarily because of the other offensive juggernauts that they have in their division. And it was absolutely the right choice. And both in terms of how they've deployed their draft capital, the great job that John Schneider has done. We've talked about it a couple of times of late in how he's handled both the free agents that they brought in and the guys that they've exited from the building to put together this roster. I think this is the best team in the league, and they have championship caliber. However, the Rams are a championship-proven team, and they have what it takes to succeed in the big moments in the playoffs. And we saw that exemplified in how they came out of Soldier Field with that win in a game where not everything went well, and a lot of things went quite poorly for them, not least, as you said, Ciaran, the play of Matthew Stafford, who clearly, I think, is being affected by that injury, that finger injury on his throwing hand, can't be helping his accuracy. And we saw some of that in some really wayward throws manifested in his completion percentage at the end of that game. What they do really well, though, is, and Shane knows this only too well from the Patriots dynasty, they're able to key in on 1 or 2 things that their opponents do and take it away from them. And they're able to key in on an offensive perspective on 1 or 2 things that they think are going to really go well and make those the keys to the game. I think the Rams force the issue in a way that all great championship teams do. They're able to play to their strengths, and they're able to take away the strengths of the opposition. We saw them do that to the Bears at Soldier Field. That game didn't unfold in the way a lot of us thought it would, and a lot of that was down to how the Rams approached the task in front of them, particularly how they threw up a wall on the Bears' run game. It stopped them in short yardage situations. That ultimately was the key to that game. The Bears going for it on 4th down, going for it on 3rd and short repeatedly, being stoned and turning the ball over and not being able to convert red zone opportunities in a way that could have put them over the top and given them a lead that they might have been able to hang on to at home, and coming up with big interceptions, forcing the Bears to go, or tempting the Bears to go big game hunting, and finding a way to pick the ball off. 3 interceptions in that game against the Bears team that had not only excelled itself in terms of what they were able to take away and how they racked up turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, but very rarely gave the ball away during the regular season. Like, they'd single-digit interceptions thrown by Caleb Williams during the regular season, 3 in that one game, which was the difference between the two teams, or one of the main differences between the two teams at the end of the day. So what does that do in terms of how the Rams approach this Seahawks challenge? They've only got one running back to Ciaran, and you got to believe they're going to take away, to the best of their ability, what Kenneth Walker did last weekend. The Seahawks were able to do that more because it was the 49ers than that they've necessarily ascended to the next level in terms of their ability to run the football. And you can be damn sure the Rams are going to, and Chris Shula, their defensive coordinator, are going to look to try and take that away. Kobe Turner is an absolute game wrecker. He's playing at his best in the biggest games. Their secondary has stepped up as well. And again, what they will want to do is, as any team would want to do playing the Seahawks, put Seattle in a hole and make Sam Darnold have to throw to win the game. Because that's clearly not what the Seahawks want to do. I've used this comparison before. They are a better version of this season's Eagles, where they play very, very conservatively. They don't put the ball at risk, which, by the way, is the right thing to do. Why would you if you don't have to? You give yourself the best chance to win by hanging onto the football, by not taking risks if you don't have to. They've also been forced to do that, and I think this is a critical thing, by Darnold's injury. It is hampering him, and they've hidden that quite well because they defend so well, and because last week they ran the ball so well, and because they were playing a really banged up 49ers team that I think we've overlooked a couple of things here in the last couple of weeks. And I saw this highlighted by the NFL Daily podcast earlier today, and shout out to them. Sam Darnold has had 4 passing attempts of over 20 yards in the last 3 games. None of them have been completed. This was, if you remember, back in the early stages of the season, the most explosive offense in football. The offense that racked up chunk plays better than any other offense in the league, with the possible exception, and they got overtaken as the season went, of the Chicago Bears that we talked about, and that Ben Johnson explosive offense. The Seattle Seahawks, it's not been taken away from them. It's just not available to them because Darnold isn't able to put the ball up like that, which means they can't take full advantage of Rashid Shaheed and what he was brought in to do, apart from what he contributes on special teams. And we saw a sterling example of that last week in his kickoff return against the Bills. You saw what Jackson Smith and Jigba was held to last week, because they don't have that 20, 30, 40-yard receiving threat from Njigba anymore. Not that he can't make it happen, but that they just can't get the ball to him in those situations. And if you force the Seahawks to have to do that, it's just not there. And you can absolutely bet that that's what the Rams are going to do. Having said all that, I think we've seen the Seahawks, twice in this matchup already, find ways to hurt the Rams and find ways to turn the game in their favor, even when Darnold hasn't had a good game. I mean, probably the game, and we talked about this at the time, I remember, that highlighted just how good the Seahawks were and how far they'd come on, was the one they lost to the Rams, where they went down 21-19, in spite of just about everything going wrong for them. I was really, really impressed, and I know collectively we were really, really impressed by the character they showed, by the culture they showed. This team has everything it needs to win a Super Bowl. We know that the Rams have everything they need to win a Super Bowl. I think this is just a Rams team that hasn't quite performed at that level. And the Seahawks do what we know they're capable of doing, and they take advantage of the 12th man at home. They'll just about get over the line. I don't think there'll be very much in it, but I do think it's going to be Seattle who will win the day. Shane?
I think the important thing to look at here is that matchups matter. The last 2 games that the Seahawks played against San Francisco 49ers, the Seahawks are a very physical team. Against the Niners, they brought physical football against a very battered team. And they played the game really well. They got exactly what they needed to. Every stat about this matchup is just tremendous. You actually go back to, in their all-time history, the Seahawks are 29-28 over the Rams. In that time, Seattle has scored 1,223 points. The Rams, 1,222. Incredible stat. But even in the 2 games they played this year, the Rams have scored 58, the Seahawks have scored 57, and in those, the total yards is Rams 830, Seahawks 829. And obviously they split the series 1-1, each side of the home team winning. So this is a very, very closely fought, and even the fact that in these games, the Seahawks offense turned the ball over so much, yet they still managed to come close in LA to a point where even though they lost, they felt good about themselves. And then being on Thursday Night Football, win the craziest Thursday Night Football game probably in history, would tell you that, they're probably feeling better about this. But there's 3 areas, if we actually just look at the matchups, where I think it'll be key. Firstly, the Rams passing game. The Rams passing game, Stafford who stands in the pocket the most, more than any other quarterback. So he's actually a target for the top frontline pressure that the Seahawks will put in, and the Seahawks are very good at putting in. And not only is the Seahawks very good at putting in that frontline pressure, but they're also very good at doing it in a certain way you actually don't expect it. Against Stafford, who does the least amount of scrambles of any quarterback in the league. He's the old-fashioned pocket passer. I think that gives advantage to the Seahawks in the passing game. That linked to the fact that the Rams have become more reliant on Puca Nacua rather than spreading around the offense as much in the last few games. We were criticizing earlier in the season how reliant Seattle were on that Darnold to Jackson Smith-Njigba link, and that they weren't spreading the love a bit. Yet it's Seattle now who spread the love a bit. Jackson Smith-Njigba only took 1 pass in the first half last week, whereas the Rams, I think, are almost too hyper-focused on the Nacua passing lane, which I think gives an advantage to Seattle because their defense is strong enough and I think well-equipped to deal with that matchup. Then you have the run game. And this is very interesting because I've watched back over the last couple of games, and even just how each team is learning from game 1 to game 2. For example, the Seahawks in game 2 played very little man coverage compared to game 1 in terms of managing the pass game. But in the run game, in both instances, they missed a lot of passes. They missed the Rams offense. The Rams running backs were able to get through the Seahawks, and the Seahawks missed a lot of tackles, and more so than they do normally. And it meant that the Rams run game was able to get yards and able to get yards in key moments. And if we're talking about matchups matter, that's an area where the Rams have been good against the Seattle defense already this year twice, and I can't see that changing. And considering that Charbonnet is out, you'd have to say that in the run game, the Rams, I would say, probably have a bit of a leg up. But it's the passing game against the Seattle defense against the LA defense that I find the most difficult to figure out. Sam Darnold versus that LA defense, who the LA defense has given up almost 27 points on average in their last 8 games. They have not been playing good in the second half of this season. But Sam Darnold hates to see the Rams coming against him. He's given up 6 turnovers already to this team. Yes, he managed to get the confidence-building victory on Thursday Night Football when he came up there in the second half, in the second game that they played this season. But do you think that Sean McVay and all the coaches in that Rams setup who saw the Seattle come into their territory and feel good about themselves after losing and then beating them in a game where they really should not have beaten them, the Seahawks are now holders of the 1 seed that should rightfully be the Rams in their mind after that game? Do you think that the Rams are coming into this with a way to bring out the best defensive performance they've played all season against a quarterback that they've played well against in the last 3 games they've played? If you go back to Sam Darnold's game for the Vikings last year, I think it's all there for the Rams to come in here and really make Sam Darnold blow up. We always wonder if there's going to be a game where Sam Darnold has a blow-up game. And I know you were mentioning earlier on, Conor, the stats that Sam Darnold just does not go for deep passes in the last few games. He's been a bit more conservative and letting his wide receivers get the yards after catch, which has worked very well. It's a worthwhile tactic. But I have to wonder, is there a point in the second half where Darnold feels like he has to start going for more deep passes because Charbonnet isn't getting the run? Both of these quarterbacks rely so much on play action. But play action only works if you have an excellent run game. And hey, obviously Kenneth Walker is still there for the Seahawks, excellent running back in his own right. But it completely changes the run game, which changes the play action game for Seattle, which changes how often Darnold's going to try to go for the deep ball, I think. I think it leaves him susceptible to a lot of these interceptions and turnovers and just sloppiness, which has made him blow up against the Rams already, twice this year, in fact. But he got away with it 1.5 times, if you think about it. So I think this is a matchup where Sam Darnold is destined to lose. And I missed a trick here earlier because I have my Patriots jersey for my AFC pick. And for my NFC pick, and Brian's going to hate me for this, I'm going for the Rams. So let's have a Super Bowl 53 rematch, shall we?
I think it's okay, Shane, because you're not wearing the jersey. It's Brian objects to people wearing the jerseys of rival teams. You're allowed to touch it, and maybe you should have worn gloves because Brian could be a little bit fastidious.
There he is enjoying himself, actually wearing the jersey. Is that my cue, Conor, to come in?
We're split, Brian, and you got the casting vote.
Okay, well, Shane, you said, what was it? He got away for a game and a half. He got away for a game and a quarter because at the end of the third quarter of that game in December, they were 23-14 down, and he had less than 150 yards thrown. I'm referring to Sam Darnold. He finished on 247. Matthew Stafford in that game finished on 427 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think there's an argument that you could say the Rams should have blown them out in both games this season because the Rams weren't on their game the first time round, and people were, yes, including ourselves, were lauding up to how well Seattle battled to stay in the game, opportunity to win, but they had turned over Sam Darnold 4 times in that game. In the second game, the miraculous 2-point conversion, like it still should have counted. I'm still not entirely sure whether it was the right decision. I know we get into refereeing decisions every week, including me and Conor in particular. So let's not jump back into that one. But like, just so many things went in the Seahawks' favor in that fourth quarter. And I imagine McVay after that game would have said, "Oh, this is a terrible loss. It's a sickener. It's inevitably going to cost us the 1 seed." It did. However, we'll see these guys again. And if we play in the manner in which we play for 3 quarters and can continue that for 4, we can do well. And I thought, bearing in mind how well the Bears offense has played in the second half of games over the last 4 or 5 weeks, and the heroics that Caleb Williams has put up, and people are talking about that great touchdown at the end, and it was in its own right. I still think the Rams actually played quite well defensively over the course of the game. You referred to Owen tonight, Conor, about the fact that the big stops on 4th down. And I think the Rams defense is slightly underrated in this game. And I'm going to go back to what Conor actually said earlier. He's saying about the fact that Sam Darnold's numbers aren't jumping off the page. He's had no receptions over 20 yards. But what happens if that injury actually is there as a real concern and it becomes a shootout game? Do we genuinely believe that Sam Darnold is the guy that can go toe-to-toe with Matthew Stafford? I don't. So I'm not going to actually deliberate for much longer. I'm actually with Shane. I'm with the Rams. I believe it's the Rams. So for me, it's very different direction. I have a Rams, Broncos. And before we do close out, that's the question I think we all have to answer. So
it's a great question. And, Rory's thrown it in there. How are you, Rory? Good to hear from you. What 2 teams' styles will make the most entertaining Super Bowl for the benefit of anyone listening rather than watching? Styles make fights, as you say, Rory. For me, if Bo Nix was fit, I'd say Broncos-Rams. I'd love to see the Broncos go up against the Rams. I'd love to see how Stafford and McVay would approach that Denver defense. I'd also love to see how Bo Nix and the Broncos would go up against the Rams defense. And, you want to see 2 great quarterbacks at the top of their game. I think that would have been a great matchup. So I'm going to default to Rams Patriots as the matchup that's the best match of styles. However, I would kind of like to see Patriots Seahawks as the trilogy of Super Bowls. I think that would be a nice rivalry. I'll throw it out to you, gents.
I'll jump in. Sorry. I agree with Conor. I would once I pick Broncos Rams to win on the weekend, my preference would be to see a Patriots Rams Super Bowl because McVay's won a Super Bowl, but let's not forget he got schooled by the Patriots. And I know it's a different regime, different organization. He was inexperienced going in there, and Belichick, clearly had him in his back pocket throughout the course of the game. It feels like a few rights, he used to right a few wrongs on that particular performance. So that would be intriguing conversation leading up to it. But as sides of both teams, I think if we had a Patriots-Rams Super Bowl in Santa Clara, I think we'd be all in for a treat.
Yeah, I have to say, it is what I picked, but I mean, just fundamentally speaking, and maybe I'm speaking as a typical journalist who wants an easy article to write. The MVP race is here as between Drake May and Matt Stafford. So why don't we let the Super Bowl be between Drake May and Matt Stafford? I think for me that would make the greater matchup. And I think either way, like all of these matchups have great stories within them. Patriots Seahawks, and as a lot in it as well. But I mean, the having the star quarterbacks just face off, new generation, old generation, all that kind of thing. I think it would be a great watch.
Yeah, that's what you, Ciaran.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think Rams Pats, you want to see, teams loaded with offensive weapons. When it comes to the Super Bowl, everyone talks about tactics and, defensive struggles. And we want to see the ball being thrown out. We want to see touchdowns. We want to see exciting play. I think if you had the Rams and Pats in there, I think you would get that.
Let's go. In just a couple of days' time, we'll know who is going to be matching up in Super Bowl 60. We'll have lots of coverage between now and the end of Championship Sunday, and all our instant reaction and everything you've come to know and love and expect from the Irish NFL show between.